Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network. My name is Lee Hutchison, and Dallas King and I make our way through the A24 filmography and along the way bring you interviews with the talent involved in front of and behind the camera. In this episode, we're really thrilled to welcome Albert Birney, the man behind the unforgettable Mr. Sprinkly in I Saw the TV Glow. Albert is also a prolific filmmaker and shares with us his story in the film industry, including how he became involved in I Saw the TV Glow and his experience working on the film, where he also took on the unique role of a talking ice cream. A big thanks to Albert for joining us, and be sure to tune in next week for a special guest as we celebrate our 200th episode. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Used to be one of the rotten ones, and I loved you for that.
You are a director, writer, editor, producer, and actor, probably just to name but a few. What was the beginning of your creative journey?
Oh, that's a tough one. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been drawing, just really loved drawing, and then that led to like painting, and that led to music. I used to record a lot of songs in the basement with my brothers, and then at some point, film kind of became the thing. I think around high school, when you start watching more movies and thinking, wow, that's something that maybe I could do. And you borrow someone's dad's camcorder and you start making videos. This is back before it was digital, and it was mini DV tapes. So it was like you had just hundreds of these little mini DV tapes filled with these very at the time you thought they were really huge films, but then looking back on them, they're just kind of, a lot of them were riffing on Scorsese or gangster movies that I was into at the time. A version of those with your friends, your 17-year-old friends. But yeah, so then I went to school for film, and then really about halfway through school really got into animation and took an animation class and was interested in kind of like trying to figure out how to combine live action filmmaking with animation. So I saw one of my film professors showed me Alice by Jan Svankmajer, the Czech surrealist animator, and that really kind of blew my mind and opened up my brain to a whole new type of filmmaking that could be kind of half live action, half animation, very surreal, very tactile. I've always been a fan of like the films that really feel like they've been touched by somebody, like they're you can feel like the filmmaker's fingerprint in the movie, whether that's like a literal fingerprint in clay or just like their style coming through. So yeah, and then just through school, I kept doing that, and then after school, I started making music videos for my friends who were in bands. It was a great way to like make a 3-minute film, and you didn't have to worry about the sound because it was just the music of the band. So I did that for a few years, which then kind of just led to making my first feature film with my friend John, called The Beast Pageant, which was, it was like 3.5 years of shooting on 16 millimeter film on a Bolex, just a great time. And, then that kind of led to the next film, which led to the next film, which, here I am many years later, still kind of on that journey, making things with my friends.
Have you always wanted to be that kind of broad, kind of creative, or is there a field that you feel more attached to perhaps than another?
Yeah. For me, it's always, I jump around to different roles, I think, because ultimately different projects kind of scratch different itches that you have. And, whether it's helping friends make a project or animating by myself into the night or working as part of a bigger team. Yeah, I don't really, I like story. I like telling stories. So a lot of time it's just like an idea that I have that kind of you share with friends, and some friends align with it. And then you all kind of go on this journey together. Um, the last two films I've made have been with my dear friend and collaborator, Kentucker Audley. And we're working on hopefully our third one now, which it's been a journey, but I really love collaborating and making things with Kentucker and with friends, just because filmmaking is it's very at its root, it feels like this very kind of insane undertaking. Like you're trying to literally like stop time or go against like the natural kind of flow of the universe, by like making imaginary worlds and making people fly, or making mice dance, or just different things that shouldn't happen. So it's nice to have a buddy, it's nice to have a friend to go through it with, who you can kind of at the end of the day look at each other and just say like, okay, we made it together. Let's just do it another day. Let's keep going.
And I suppose we've seen it in the past few years, like relying on the studios, Hollywood, to fund these things, to turn up for the kind of smaller films, the personal projects is hard to come by, but you can rely on friends and like that community that you've clearly established. That's always a constant, it feels like.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's as it gets harder and harder to kind of fund movies, and you just keep hearing people say how what a hard time, what a strange time it is in the industry, with all the strikes and all these um yeah, just uncertainty about the future. At the end of the day, you can still just kind of like grab a camera and go make a movie with a friend. And I taught film for a few years here in Baltimore, and that was the thing I always would tell the students. It's like, look, they all have these big dreams of, Hollywood and explosions and multi-million dollar budgets. And, I get it. I have those dreams too. But while you're waiting for those dreams to happen, you should be doing something, like what do you have around you right now? Who are the friends, the actors, the crew that are willing just to go out into a field and have fun with you, at midnight on a Wednesday night or something? Like, make those movies while you can. And, in my own slow career, if you want to call it that, or journey, it's like starting out just making movies with my friends has grown into bigger things, and I think that's the key, is just like, why are you in it in the first place? Why are you making films? Is it to like be rich and famous? That's not a good reason. You should do it just because what else do you want to do on this earth with your time, but like have fun with your friends and make something special from your soul, and I think if you're doing that, then maybe if you're lucky, other things might happen afterwards. But if they don't, that's okay, because you still had a heck of a time with your buds.
We've always asked these of whenever we've had to tick off like a new location, some of our guests will call in from, of like, you're a first one from Baltimore, like what's like the community like there for film, like whether it's like watching it or like the community for making it, what, like, is there something that makes Baltimore quite special?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just that it's a place where it's still somewhat affordable or easy to live. So I've lived in New York, I've lived in other places where the rent is a lot higher, the cost of living is much higher. It's just more difficult to like kind of be a struggling artist, whereas in Baltimore, it's still, I feel like you can still do that. Uh you can just film kind of on the street and no one's going to stop you. You can, you know, call up a supermarket and ask if you can film there, and they're going to just let you do it for free. Whereas like New York or LA, maybe some places know that they can charge you a lot of money. So yeah, for me, I grew up here too, so it's nice to have, my family here, and those roots that I grew up with. But yeah, I think also, John Waters is from here, and he's a great, he's still around. You still see him going out to movies and shows, and but his films were very much do it yourself with your friends, be weird, don't conform to any, idea of what a movie should be. And I think that still is in the water a little bit, no pun intended. Um, but yeah, I don't know. And it's it's a relatively small city compared to the bigger cities. And yeah, it is a pretty small film scene. Everybody kind of knows everybody. You know what people are up to. You know what projects people are working on. And for many years, there was the Maryland Film Festival here, which was a great yearly festival every May, where a lot of people would come from out of town, and it was, um, I think that happening every year for many years kind of made Baltimore feel like this little point, this little place where good movies were being made, and people wanted to come and share their movies every year. So yeah, I think that's what Baltimore is.
Nice. You've obviously got quite a kind of big filmography so far. Like, where can you recommend like people seeking out these kind of films? And is there anyone that you're particularly fond of if people were this was their first introduction to you that they should check out?
Yeah, honestly, probably the last live action feature that Ken Tucker and I made together, Strawberry Mansion, which is it's a very surreal, fantastic kind of dream movie. But it, yeah, I think just that one captured, a little bit about me and who Ken Tucker and I are. And um, yeah, I think it's most places online. I don't know if it's especially in Scotland or the UK or where it is, but over here in the States, it's on, it recently went on Tubi. Do you have Tubi?
Yeah, I think we recently got Tubi and so on. There was a real buzz about it within a very certain type of film fan here in the UK when
Yeah,
Tubi finally came along years after all the jokes about it. Then it became a different kind of platform and so on. We're
right.
definitely behind the curve here.
Tubi is cool. And people, if you watch Strawberry Mansion on Tubi, I think there's an extra layer of irony or jokes in there because Strawberry Mansion has this idea of advertising, and Tubi has ads. So you'll be watching this movie that's kind of like, has its own ads, and then like this machine that you put on your head that blocks ads, and then boom, you'll be interrupted by an actual ad. So I've been told that it adds like another layer to the film. So if you've got Tubi, check it out there. And then the other film that I feel very proud of is an animated feature that I did called Tux and Fanny, and it's on YouTube for free. And that was just I just did that by myself, and yeah, it's very different from Strawberry Mansion. Maybe it's got some overlap, but it's probably something that's like talking a little bit earlier about like the how hard it is to get films made. This was one that I just started because I needed to do something. I was going crazy in the time between films, and so I just started animating it myself. And the end product is 82 minutes, and I'm very proud of it. And there's a sequel too, which if you make it through the first one, then the second Tux and Fanny is out there waiting for you. I have dreams of doing the third one, which I'm kind of writing now, but there's a lot of other projects started, so I have to kind of figure out where I'm putting my energy.
Excellent. I'll definitely be seeking those out. And obviously, people might be very familiar with you now from, you're in UK cinemas at the moment. When did you sort of first hear about the opportunity to be part of I Saw the TV Glow?
Yeah. So Jane is an old friend, and we have just kept in touch over the years. And then in 2020, we were in a film group together, which was, I think there were about 8 or 9 of us, where we would watch 2 movies every week and then get on Zoom and talk about them. And it was one of those things that it kind of happened for a year. So it was like April 2020 to maybe April or May of 2021, when it was just like, we were all locked down. We didn't have anything. And it was just like the most wonderful, beautiful club. So we got closer. I got closer with Jane over that year as we're, you know, sharing movies. And half the calls we would all just be talking about the movies. And the other half we're just kind of, checking in and seeing how everyone's doing. And then Jane's first film, We're All Going to the World's Fair, premiered at Sundance with Strawberry Mansion, the film I just mentioned, Tucker, my film. So we were both in the next category at Sundance, which was really exciting because we'd been, in our film club talking about these projects and the post-production on them and whatnot. And that was the first year Sundance was all virtual, it was all online. So I got to, see the movie, everyone else online, their movie. And then I think pretty soon after that, they emailed a few of us in the film group, the ones that were interested in reading I Saw the TV Glow, the script. And I was very excited to read after seeing their first film. I should mention, I forgot that I did some animation in We're All Going to the World's Fair. There's a section, yeah, there's a section where it's like a typing out like an old 8-bit video game. I animated that, and I think Jane, they were like an executive producer on Tux and Fanny, and they knew I did this kind of pixel animation, so that was fun to just, it's like 20 seconds in the movie. Anyway, so I read the script in, I guess, 2021 for TV Glow, and just yeah, it hit me very hard, very emotional script. It was all there on the page. It just kind of like, everything that made it into the movie. So yeah, I just told them I loved it and how it resonated with kind of my own high school experience, a little bit of just kind of feeling like an outsider. For me, the show was X-Files that I really,
Yeah, I was an X-Files kid as well. BBC Two Sunday night and so on. And yeah, I there was an element where I was thinking about that recently, where like I was a 10-year-old when the film came out, and like I went to the cinema, put on two pairs of socks so that I would look like 15 years old to get into the film. Like that was a huge moment for me as like a 90s kid.
amazing. Yeah. So yeah, you get, these shows, especially of that era, maybe still today, but um, they felt this is kind of like it was like early internet, and there were like message boards, and so yeah, just responded to it, and then actually, Jane came here to Baltimore for 3 or 4 days, and I think this would have been early 2022, January 2022. We still had our Christmas tree up. That's how I remember it was like post Christmas, but it was early January, and we drew. I think I drew about 15 or 20 different scenes in the movie. They weren't storyboards. They were more just like, here's this moment when, you know, uh, Owen is laying in the basement and electricity or something's happening above their head. And I think Jane just wanted to kind of like start visualizing certain key moments. And we were doing a lot of like the lighting and the shadow and the colors and just kind of figuring that out. And then they took those to the cinematographer and was kind of like, here's, these scenes, and this is kind of how I want them to look. So that I never done that before. Even for my own films, I never really like dove into that, but it was fun to do, and it was exciting to see Jane kind of like have the vision already formed. So then that would have been January, and then they were off in pre-production mode, um, and didn't hear anything until that summer, I guess, when they asked myself and Graham Mason, who's a friend and filmmaker, who made an amazing film called Inspector Ike, which is also on Tubi and you should watch. But Graham was also in our film club, so Jane knew the two of us and asked us if we would film some elements that would appear on the TV in throughout the movie at TV Glow. And so that was a really fun kind of assignment. And we did a couple commercials. We did an animated section, which is Tux and Fanny, my Tux and Fanny creation, but like as imagined if it was on TV at 9:30 right before the Pink Opaque. And then yeah, they had Jane had the script for that scene, which is like the alternate, like the true version of what the Pink Opaque was for Owen as an adult looking back. And it was, very fun to make this paper mache ice cream mask in my basement. And we found a suburb here in Baltimore and filmed it, found some local children actors, and um yeah, so that kind of happened. And then all throughout this, I knew that Jane was casting like the actual TV Glow. And at some point, I think I was kind of working with them still because I had done some of these design drawings, and some of the design drawings were of characters. So I was like, they had hired a VFX house in California to make the big Mr. Sprinkly, like the really scary one that appears first time in the movie. So I was like on all these email chains with this amazing mask, kind of going back and forth with the designs, and they were kind of basing it off our original drawings and then basing part of it off of like the paper mache version I'd made. And I think someone from that company was going to wear it like in the movie because it's very big and bulky. And I forget what happened, but something either fell through or the person got sick or couldn't do it. And at that point, I think I kind of nudged Jane and said, "Hey, uh, I would love to put it on." The first film that Ken Tucker and I made together called Silvio, I wore a latex mask for the entire film, so I had a little bit of I had worn a mask before, so I figured, I'm probably as qualified as anybody, and also because I wore the paper mache one, maybe it'll be fun to have like both Mr. Sprinkleys be the same person. And yeah, Jane said, "Okay, let's do it. That sounds great." And yeah, I think this was August of 2022. They were filming in New Jersey. So I think I took the train up or I drove up to New York. I stayed at my sister's apartment and yeah, headed to the set early one morning. I think it was a Sunday. It was like a Sunday morning maybe. And yeah, it was just one day of filming with this mask. And it was very fun arriving on the set. There was like a trailer and it just said Mr. Sprinkly on the door. And I was like, that's pretty cool. First time I've ever had a trailer and it's for this ice cream character. But yeah, it was all in all, it was fun to be a part of the film for many years, from reading the script and doing the drawings and then working on these inserts, these, things that appeared on the screens in the movie, and then to finally like get to go to the set and see Jane in action, see like when I came, I think it was like the last week, it was one of the last few days. So it had a little bit of that feeling of everybody has been doing this for like a month and it's very hot and everyone's doing great work, but I felt like all excited and like, hey, this is so cool. I'm on this film set. And I think some people were just like, here we go. We got to just get through this last week.
And when you were kind of designing the mask, the kind of this paper mache mask, what kind of inspirations were you drawing from? Because did you have an idea of what like this terrifying version was, and it's like what's the complete opposite to that, or kind of thinking back, what would be on Nickelodeon or all those kind of networks and so on at the time, and just designing from there. What was your kind of thought process?
Definitely. It was definitely those Nickelodeon shows. Pete and Pete was a big one. Uh, is it the Adventures of Pete and Pete? They have an episode with an ice cream character, and I know that was definitely Jane and I talked about that, and yeah, just like the flip side of a terrifying creature should feel very, you know, playful and cartoony, and it's also kind of the limits of what I could do with paper mache. I'm not doing like a mold or I'm not like a master mask maker. So it's kind of like it fit perfectly into what I was able to do. And yeah, the mask had a Velcro mouth and eyebrows. So it's kind of mean, angry. And yeah, those are just like Velcroed on. And then I would kind of stay still and Graham or Emma, producer that day, would run in and change them, Velcro them the happy face and the happy eyebrows when the young girl says, "Let's have a soup party." Um, yeah. So, and then, yeah, I was looking back through some old emails and it's like the VFX house, the mask makers in LA, they had their own in-house artist who was just doing like these amazing drawings, which I think were like, I don't know what the inspiration was, probably just like the simple version just made very realistic and actually how horrifying it would be if there was, like ice cream spilling out of the mouth and like the eyes kind of cloudy and just like these really cool drawings that then they did I think pretty close job to actualizing them in the final version. But um yeah, I don't know. I know that Jane is a big fan of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think that was a big inspiration for Pink Opaque. So I'm sure some of those monsters, the different monsters of the week would have informed kind of the design too.
I can kind of see now, having speaking about the X-Men, I could see Mulder with like a gun in the face of like the more horrifying version
Right.
of it,
Yeah.
and Scully being a bit dismissive. Like I can picture that in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure Jane watched X-Files too. I think we've talked about that before. So yeah, all of these shows of that era, they all were, I think, big inspirations to filmmakers now our age, and it's exciting to kind of see how that shows up. You can see like the different both those old TV shows and also video games. I think there's like a crop of filmmakers now who you can feel like, oh, they grew up playing Zelda, or they played Mario the same way I
It
played
feels like we're
Mario.
getting to that stage where what was it like maybe about a decade ago that we got the late 70s, 80s kids that had Star Wars and we saw like, your kind of J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnsons, etc. coming through that was their grounding. And then it's going to be interesting as the years go on. Like you got the 90s when TV became a little bit more better quality in terms of the output, and we're going to get into the HBO eras as well. That how are people going to be informed by kind of those experiences that they had? And I think we're definitely starting to see that. I mean, you certainly see that with Jane. Like they clearly experienced like the internet and sort of the TV in a very unique way, and you've seen that in their two films so far.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny too when Jane came here and we were drawing, we would finish a drawing and then to reward ourselves, we would play Mario on the Switch. The In Super Mario Brothers 3, you can do that first. Once you beat the first level, you can go back and play it. It's a battle mode. I don't know if you ever played that, but we would just battle for 10, 15 minutes and then kind of reset and do another drawing. And yeah, it's just so yeah, fun to feel the TV and the video games
Yeah.
influence.
And it sounds like people might just see it first. Oh, this was the guy that was the ice cream man. But talking from you, you have your involvement throughout the kind of film, and it sounds like based on your career so far that you're someone that likes to do all these different parts of films as well. And there must be something so rewarding about that of not just being a day player or oh, I'm just considered for one job, but something where you can have a kind of say and impact and be a real creative kind of contributor.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that's the fun of, you know, having friends who are also their own filmmakers and, kind of this big working situation where I can help out on Jane's film and I showed Jane an early cut of, one of my films for feedback and Graham, who I did the little TV bits with. That was the first time the two of us had really worked on a project together, so that was exciting. And yeah, it's like I said, it's like filmmaking is such a collaborative, art form, and the more you can kind of like find the right people, your people that are like on the same wavelength, or maybe even on different wavelengths, but like when you put each other to, put your brains together, these exciting things happen. And I think Jane's very smart in that they were like, let me get Graham and Albert to do these other things because it's supposed to feel a little bit different than the rest of the movie. So, you know, Jane had a very clear vision of what those should be on the script, but then it was kind of like, I'm getting you to do this because I, trust you and I like your styles and just have fun with it.
Yeah. And was that a challenge to go back to the 90s and that visual aesthetic back into those boxed in TV kind of screens and even just like how people are set aside, the kind of the acting in these sorts of things. Was it a challenge or was it quite easy to kind of
Yeah, it was quite easy and actually it was quite fun. Especially there's the one ad which you can see a little bit of for the young adult network, which is what the Pink Opaque is on. They have a magazine called Young Adult Party, YAP, and it's very much inspired by the like Nickelodeon magazine, with like the bright orange colors and the green goop. And so we watched, Graham and I watched a bunch of those old commercials, and they were on TV all the time, so they're just kind of like buried deep inside of us. And so it was fun to like let's make our own version of that and rip off some shots, but also have try some new ideas and then knowing that it's going to be played on. I think they even did some like they put it through a VCR first maybe, or then they put it on the TV. But just it's always fun knowing that like it's going to be removed a little bit and it's just going to be this kind of like background thing. Um, so yeah, it was actually like working on all those were very fun, and Graham and I had just a blast. And um, one little side story, the day we were filming the ice cream Mr. Sprinkly in the suburbs, we got in the car to drive there. Graham and I did loaded the big head in the back of my car and turned on the radio, and Ice Cream Man by Tom Waits started playing. And we were just like, what? It was just on the radio randomly and we couldn't believe it. And as we were driving, then that song ended. And then the next song came on and it was another ice cream song. And we were like, this is insane. What's going on here? It happened like three times. And finally the radio DJ came on and said, it's National Ice Cream Day. And we had no idea, but it just felt like one of those things like, okay, this is a sign. This is the right day to film. This is all happening for a reason.
It's amazing. And, one of the things that was the highlight I experienced at my screening and the person I do this podcast with and theirs as well, that the line that in the wintertime, instead of selling ice cream, you can sell soup, got one of the biggest belly laughs. And I was saying it to my mate the other day. I went to see TV Glow, obviously came out here in the UK, and it was like the story of how it's come around into the cinema so quickly here. Like it was maybe coming here, but then there was no official date. And I think Jane got a campaign sort of going up on Twitter like just about a month ago of like, let's get it into cinemas. How can we get it here? And Sony put it in this week, and it was kind of the counter programming to Deadpool and Wolverine. There was a really great stat the other day where, all relative and so on, where it was like, oh, TV Glow got like 1,400 per screen in the UK, and there was a really great turnout to these screenings. Like people are like, I could see the other Marvel movie, or I could see this, but being the completionist I was, I saw both, and that got a bigger belly laugh than anything in Deadpool Wolverine, which is admittedly a low bar for a movie like that. But it was one of those ones you're just like, there's this brilliant independent film. What a brilliant payoff that line was. And then you just watch this film where it's like the worst jokes, just constant crap and stuff. But that one was just a real highlight for me. I think that could be one of the moments of the year for me.
Oh, that's so great to hear. And yeah, I think, Jane is so smart. That was one of the lines that they had written. But I think in that scene, especially, the movie, it's kind of been building and there's, it's an emotional film. And then that scene when Owen goes back and watches it, it's kind of a lighter moment where it's a little bit silly or like it's still very sad because it's kind of that idea of like, look how things are different when you're older looking back. This thing you remember being very scary is actually very silly and goofy. And it almost like the film gives you that moment to kind of like have a laugh or have just kind of like a release a little bit. Even though it's still kind of beneath the surface to me, very poignant and sad, but just yeah. So that's cool to hear that's hitting. I've I've seen the film. I've seen it twice. I saw an early cut with just Jane and a few friends, and that it was unfinished. That it had unfinished VFX and music and all that. And then I saw it recently at the New York premiere, and that was wonderful. Um, but I want to try to see it uh, in a theater where I can kind of feel that release and that
It was definitely a real treat, and it was great to just see like it was, a sunny Sunday afternoon. Like it's getting a couple of showings a day here in Edinburgh. It was just like, oh, there are people here to see this, and so on. Sometimes you think about these films and you hear about them in your own bubble, and you're like, oh, there is a wider community that wants to see these original films and so on, and feel probably either underserved or desperate to support a film like this, especially one that's kind of come out of nowhere after a few months of buzz, kind of
yeah,
stateside.
definitely. Yeah, I think it's so nice when just new films and new voices and you know mentioning like the Deadpool and Wolverine. It's like yeah, there's those movies, but there's a whole other world and universe of movies that can be out there, and so it's nice when one kind of breaks through and can cross over the ocean and find a bigger audience, hopefully.
There was a great tweet I saw earlier this week where it was like some stills from Deadpool, like, crazy budget. And then it was like above it, and like thousands of shares was like, I saw the TV Glow has a budget of 0.033% of Deadpool, and it had some of those beautiful kind of purple shots and images and so on. And just reminding people like, there's such great independent movies that artists like yourself are involved in, where you go, oh, this is clearly a passion project brought to life by people that are interested and think about the craft as opposed to kind of churning stuff out. And it was just, I saw that tweet multiple times before I went into the cinema, which just kind of hyped me up even more of like, I need to finally see this. And what And what's Jane like as a director? Obviously, a kind of a very much a new voice, but I think for some of us, we're getting to know them a little bit better from some of these brilliant interviews and so on. What are they like as a director? It obviously sounds like you have a good working relationship, but what was that even like to be directed by them?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was such a quick kind of scene, and I mostly just remember how hot it was under the mask. But I think what I just remember is that they had a very, very clear vision of what they wanted, and yeah, I think it was like a well-oiled machine. Like I said, it was the end of the shoot, so when I came in there, it was kind of like everybody was knew what to do and how to do it. Yeah, I just remember very gentle direction, just kind of telling me to do the the ice cream take again, or lean forward a little bit more on this take and lift your hand up a little higher. Nothing too crazy. Um, I wish, having seen it, been on set just one day. After I took off the ice cream helmet, they were shooting a couple more scenes, so I just kind of hung around on the edge and watched. But yeah, they just seemed like they had they were working really closely with Eric, the DP, and just kind of lining up the shots and getting everything that they needed to get that day. So yeah, I can't say much more than that other than yeah, they had a vision. They had a clear vision, and I think it's nice when you feel like somebody in charge knows what they want. I've been on some film sets where maybe you don't feel that. Maybe you feel that the director is a little bit unsure, and it can definitely be a little bit tougher in that situation because you're looking for someone to kind of be like in charge. I think there's a lot of crew and a lot of people who are just basically want someone to make the decisions, and so um, from what I saw, I think they were making the right decision. They knew the decisions they wanted made.
And that feels like it translates to us as a viewer and so on. Like you watch TV Glow, World's Fair, and you go, that's someone's vision and so on brought to life. It doesn't feel like by committee and so on. It feels like you look at that and go, oh, I get that is a person that's made this and so on. And there's you feel like you really want to dive into their brain.
And exactly, I think with some of these bigger movies, there's maybe because there's so much more money involved, there's so much more of like a committee feeling behind it where it's been stripped of that kind of feeling of this comes from one person, and it's more of like this is just a Marvel movie or whatever, and it's gonna tick all the little boxes here, but at the end you're gonna leave kind of empty. I know, and I mean no disrespect to any of those movies, but I remember I think I saw the first Avengers, and I was like it was like a roller coaster ride. I was like whoa whoa whoa, and then you leave the theater, and I kind of had an empty feeling a little bit, and again, I mean nothing against these films, but I think usually what I relate to more, or what I find uh, I'm interested in, is films that feel like they are coming from some somebody's like soul, or something pure and real inside. Uh, and that comes in all different types. There's all different types of movies and filmmakers that can do that. It's not just like, I'm not talking about just like an indie film. I'm talking about, like the Coen brothers, for example, or like David Lynch. I watch their films, and as they've gotten bigger, you still feel them in the movie. You never feel like they're like making decisions to please the studio or to please the money people. And you know, so yeah, I think that's personally what I love about filmmaking myself, and what I react to and respond to in others' films.
I'm curious, where's the paper mache hat head now?
It's in the basement still. It's just down there, and yeah, my nieces and nephew were visiting recently, and I showed it to them. And yeah, I still have dreams of putting it in a future film project, kind of like in the background, a little Easter egg, if Jane will give the okay.
I look forward to seeing that. Like it feels like it's destined for like the Hollywood Museum or something. Like I know they added like the midsummer dress and whatever there a couple of years ago. I feel like that's the next stage is getting Mr. Sprinkly in there.
Yeah, I guess I have to keep it together then. Right now it's on the ground, and every once in a while I'm like, I hope it doesn't flood down here or anything. Maybe I'll put it on a table so that it can stay in good shape.
And it's obviously immortalized in a T-shirt that sold out it quite instantly on online as well. Have you got? Did you manage to blag one or?
I didn't. I think I saw that shirt after it was already out. Maybe they'll do another pressing and I'll be able to grab one. But I did just see that the Blu-ray was announced or
Yeah,
is
I saw that. It
coming.
looks like a beautiful set.
Yeah, and it comes with little Polaroids, and one of the Polaroids is Mr. Sprinkly. And it was actually so after I filmed the scene and I took the head off and had a break, we went over to like a school where they had been filming and we did a whole like photo shoot with Sprinkly. So I put it back on and there's I don't know if this exists anywhere or if it should exist, but there's like a 20-minute interview maybe with me wearing the Sprinkly, doing like a voice, and they're just asking me questions, and I was kind of like just joking around. Maybe it's on the Blu-ray, or maybe a bit of it appears somewhere on the featurette on there. But
It's the best promotional technique for ever getting anyone to listen to. Get the 20-minute Mr. Sprinkly cut.
yeah, but yeah, I was happy to see that one of the pictures is in the Blu-ray at least. So
Amazing. So one day you'll be at Comic Con signing it for some young fan.
right, yeah.
So what's kind of coming next for yourself, Albert? I can imagine there's probably a lot of exciting projects on the horizon.
Yeah, it's this third film with Kentucker that we're working on. We've been writing it for a few years, and yeah, we're just getting closer, I think, to hopefully going into production. We've been, um, I'm hesitant to talk too much about that because things fall through and fall apart, but we're getting closer to the place where it might be happening. Which it's been so Strawberry Mansion premiered at Sundance in 2021, and here we are in August of 2024, and that whole time we've been working on it, writing and developing. So it's been a long couple years, but this is kind of like the end of this unofficial trilogy that the two of us have been working on. So yeah, it's just a bigger, stranger, more surreal movie than Strawberry Mansion. So
Amazing.
yeah,
I'm
hopefully the
definitely
next
gonna
year or so. Yeah.
feels like there's a lot for me to dive into. I'm about to begin a nice week off work, so I'm gonna have to check these out. And obviously we mentioned it, like TV Glow was kind of, an A24 release as well. Are there any films of their filmography that stand out for you as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, the first one is definitely Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. That one really hit me hard last year. I saw it kind of opening weekend here in Baltimore. Had a had a beautiful screening with some friends, and then I watched it a few months later on a plane, thinking, "Oh, surely this isn't going to be as good as I remember. That must have just been a magical night." And it was even better. And both times had me crying, and yeah, I think it's just a really magical film. I I had a grandmother who was very dear to me and kind of got me into film and art. And so the grandmother storyline in Marcel really resonated. And yeah, just a beautiful film with a lot of emotion and heart. So that first comes to mind. And then the other one from last year, I think it was last year, was Past Lives.
Yeah, beautiful film.
Beautiful
That was
film.
another one that I never cried, but I felt like I was on the cusp of it the whole time. Just maybe it was just like the stress or the anxiety about it. I was like just on that kind of cusp the whole time. It was intense.
It's a beautiful film, and my friend Taylor, who was one of the producers on Strawberry Mansion, she worked on that film, so she was telling me all about it during the shoot, and then I happened to be at Sundance with a film that I edited, a short that I had edited, and so I got to go to the premiere at Sundance, which was I think the world premiere. It was this huge theater, and yeah, I was crying there, and definitely just a I guess as I get older, I'm just drawn to movies that have these like really beautiful emotional centers to them that feel very much like rooted in like being alive and the strangeness of being alive and relationships and that kind of thing. So I could list a ton more films, but I think those two are the ones that even looking back to their whole the A24 canon or whatever, I think those two still rise to the top for me.
And it must feel nice as well, like, what's been amazing. I kept myself in a bubble with TV Glow, like, till I finally got to see it a week ago. Like, I knew it was purple. I knew that there was some Buffy sort of connections and the trans allegory, and who was involved behind the camera. like I wanted, that's all I wanted to know until I saw it. Like, and it, obviously been reading up on it since, and just reading some of the beautiful articles from sort of the trans, queer, and neurodivergent communities, and how much that's emotionally resonated with so many audience members as well. It must feel nice as well that films are making you feel that way, but something that you've worked on as well is really touching people as well. That must be, I suppose that's what you kind of live for as a filmmaker and a collaborator.
Definitely, definitely 100%. And I've been reading a lot of the reviews too, both like, the professional ones, but just on Letterbox. And it's been so moving and touching to hear people responding, saying, I've never felt so seen, or I've never felt so like emotionally in a movie before. So yeah, I mean, it was very, uh, makes me very happy to be a small part of that, and to see the success that Jane has had, and very excited to just see what they keep making. And if they ask me to be, wear a mask in the next one, I'll have to say yes. And you know, yeah, excited to kind of see
There's
their
going to be this third part of this kind of trilogy, the screen trilogy. So that you've been in the first two in some form or another. So hopefully, third time lucky.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
And finally, where can kind of people keep up to date with any of these kind of projects that you're working on, or what's kind of out there for people to follow?
Yeah, I mean, the landing place is just my website, which is just a Birney, Birney, aburney.com. And that's kind of a list of all of the films I've done, and I think links to find them online. I've got shorts on there and all the old music videos, and it's got links to the Twitter and the Instagram and all that. So if they head over to my website, they'll be able to find more. But yeah, I think most of the movies are online if you do a little searching, and if they're not, you can probably bootleg them somewhere too, which, at the end of the day, it's like just wanting people to see the movie. So any way people can see them is okay by me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Albert, for sharing your stories and insights and experiences with us. I really, really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, been a great talk. Thanks, Lee.